Hello, everyone. I'm Winton J. Forde, Sr., and I'm here to tell you a little bit of my life, also the Forde legacy. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, in the year of 1936, by Nebert Forde, my daddy, and Jessie Forde, my mother. I was born on the 5th of July, day after the 4th of July. And a little story that Mom told me is that down the street from where we lived, 4953 Vincennes Avenue, was a park two blocks down on 51st Street. Okay, the park was Washington Park. And on that 4th of July, Mother and Dad and a lot of the friends, along with a lady named Dr. Nunez, were enjoying the 4th of July celebration in Washington Park. Well, Mom loved watermelon and she loved fried chicken. So it was said that during the time that she was enjoying the 4th of July, she ate a lot of watermelon and fried chicken. Well, by the end of the day, she started having pains, birth pains, And what she did, instead of going home 2 blocks away, the doctor, Nunez, who happened to be at the party, said, "Come with me. I'm taking you to Providence Hospital, which is less than a block away from the party. And I'm going to put you in the hospital because you're having these birth pains." So anyway, they went on to Providence Hospital, and later on during that evening, Mother gave birth to a bouncing little boy, and here I am on the 5th of July. By the way, I too like watermelon and fried chicken. All right. I grew up right there at 4953 Vincennes. It was a lovely house. It was 3 stories and a basement. And the basement was where I did all of my playing. Okay, it was, I thought at the time, was a huge basement. But later on, when I found out, it was kind of small. But anyway, it seemed huge. 4953 was Vincennes Avenue, was also, the whole block was a play area where my friends and I, we just had ourselves a ball. And I can remember winters, okay, whereby we would run our sleds in the street of Vincennes, the 4900 block of Vincennes. And it was a fun time. It was a fun time being a little boy growing up. I often go back, but 4953, that house, is no longer there anymore. Matter of fact, that whole block is not there, just about. There has been renovation. Even the hospital is not Providence Hospital anymore. Matter of fact, Providence Hospital is where your cousin Pat, okay, received her RN degree, right there at Providence Hospital. And I remember as a teenager, no, as an older man, she was younger than I, coming home from the Army, I used to go by and see Pat as a student at Providence Hospital, and that's where she received her RN. So that street and Providence Hospital, along with Vincennes Avenue, meant a lot in my growing up. Growing up in Chicago was, I thought, was the greatest time of my life, because that's all I knew at the time was Chicago. Chicago was a great place to grow up. It had museums, it had ballparks, it had ball teams, White Sox, Cubs, Chicago Bears, It had the Fields Museum, it had the Museum of Science and Industry, it had the aquarium, and we were always close to those places. Okay, for instance, when we were on Vincent's Avenue, Dad would take us downtown. Okay, he would drive us downtown, and especially Christmas was great downtown Chicago because all of the big stores had displays, Christmas displays, animated displays, trains and moving puppets in the window. It was just awesome to see all this stuff as a kid growing up. The museum, he would even drop us off sometimes, and when I say us, I'm talking about my older brother, Erwin, drop us off at the museum, and we would just be there for hours. Everything was, wow, this is history. I remember the Fields Museum of Science and Industry had one of my favorite toys. As you walk into the museum, there was a model train set going around and around, and this train set looked like on a scale, 100 miles of train track seems like. It was just a fantastic time. And then inside the museum was a coal mine. You could get on an elevator and go down to the basement of the coal mine, and you see how these miners mine coal at the time, which was a #1 fuel product for the American homes, especially those that needed heat in the wintertime. I got used to going to White Sox Park and seeing the Chicago Bears. Now, this was interesting. Why I liked the Bears so much was the fact when we lived on Vincennes, where the Bears practice was at the University of Chicago, which was on 51st and between 51st and 55th Street of Cottage Grove. It's the start of the Chicago University. And at the Chicago University, in the middle, there was Midway, okay? And the Midway were sections of parks, okay, where during the summertime, people would enjoy this park. But the Bears practiced there, okay? And they were called Monsters, where they got that nickname from. Monsters of the Midway, because they practice on the football fields and in the park of Chicago University. Used to walk through Chicago University most of the time. And I think the teachers thought when I became a teenager that I was a student there because I would just walk into the classrooms and I just own the University of Chicago. I thought, okay, but nobody bothered you. Well, I know one teacher came out and he said, "Young man, you look pretty young to be a college student." I said, "Sir, I'm not." I just live. So I told him where I live. "Oh, okay. All right. So be careful." That's all they would say. But anyway, it was a great place at the time to grow up in. It was, to me as a boy growing up in Chicago, especially on the south side of Chicago, was just invigorating because of the parks, the educational opportunities. I know, and I always wanted to be part of the Chicago University system. However, when I got older, I found out the Chicago University, okay, if you went to the Chicago University, at that time, you had to have almost a 4.0 to get in. It was like the Harvard of the Central American states, It was very upper class. People went there. It was a private and so forth and so on. Not that I didn't still inspire to be there. However, things change as life goes on. Okay, let's talk about my sibling, Erwin, my older brother, who I looked up to, and still today. He was my rock. okay? And although he was my rock, he still wasn't available all the time. However, when I needed him, he seemed to be there. And I seemed like I always needed him when we were going to school. Now, we went to a school called Willard School. Willard School was on a street called Forestville, which was about 4 blocks away from our house. And mother, my dear mother, told me one day that I was just a bully, that I shouldn't be beating up the little boys coming home from school, which I didn't think I was. But they were bad little boys, so I had to protect myself. Now, Daddy always said, do not start fights. And I never started a fight. But he said, if you have to, finish it. And I would do that. And I would finish them in good fashion. Yes, until I got to about 6th grade. And the boys seemed to be, I know they would steal my lunch money. My mother would give me a quarter, or Dad would give me a quarter a day when I didn't have a lunch to buy lunch. And 3 or 4 big boys would always corner me and take my quarter, you know. And so one day, well, I told my dad that I didn't have lunch that day because the boys took my quarter. And he said, well, how many boys took your quarter? I said, there was always 3 of them, you know. He said, well, did you call your brother to help you out? I said, no, he was way down on the other end of the school because he was in a higher grade than I was, of course. And he said, well, you work it out. He said, one day I'll come to school and meet the boys, and we'll talk to the boys and their teacher. We probably call their parents in. Well, Dad was talking about being nice and all that stuff. I didn't want to be nice to those guys, man. I wanted some fist work, you know. I wanted to get into some fist work. So anyway, Mother usually came to pick me up sometimes and walk me home. Well, one day she told me she was coming to pick me up because she didn't want me to get into a fight with anybody, you know. And I came out to school. Some boys were messing with me, so I had to take care of them, okay? Anyway, I was looking for Mother. She wasn't there. So I walked the 4 blocks home. I got home. Mother said, well, I was there to pick you up. I said, yeah, but I didn't see you. What happened? She said, I got embarrassed because I saw you beating up these children coming down the street. And I did not pick you up because you were taking care of yourself. So I left. I said, Ma, they were beating on me. She said, no, I saw the whole thing. The minute you walked out of school, you threw a punch. And she said you threw punches all the way down the stairs and halfway down the block, and the boys ran away, and I was just too embarrassed to walk over and pick you up and call you my son. You're going to have to stop all that fighting. I said, well, they bothered me when I was in school, so I had to get them back anyway. But a lot of the times I would have to call Irwin and we would have to fight. There was a gang of boys. They were brothers. They were called the Tetterhead Gang. And why we called them the Tetterhead Gang, there was a disease. They had tetter in their hair. Okay, this whole family, there was about 6 boys. Okay, and they were all school age. We called them the Tetterhead Gang. And they would fight all the time, you know. And we just had to take care of the Tetterhead Gang. So on several occasions, I would call my brother after school, okay? And they would come down to Vincennes Avenue to take care of the Forde brothers. and we would take care of them. So anyway, as men, we used to laugh after we became men. Okay, and whenever we would go back to the neighborhood, we would look them up, or they would look us up, and it was fun to talk about all those days. Let's talk about mom and dad. Yeah, as I told you before, that dad was from Barbados. Mom was from here, from the United States, rather. And they met at your grandfather's church, Old Shiloh. Okay. Now, grandfather came from Barbados with grandma, Mother Edith. Okay. I think the year was 1919, maybe, when he came to the United States. I think it was 1919, yes. And he came on the request of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, okay? Because at the time, previous slaves were coming up from the South, coming north. And the church, should I say the white church, was not able to send workers, that many workers, to Chicago or to the northern cities to train and proselytize these souls who were coming out of the South. So the most educated men at the time in Christianity were the men from the Caribbean, okay? Those men who had not been exposed to slavery, you know, as we were up in the north. So there were several men, including Grandpa Forde, who were called by the Seventh-day Adventist Church to come and proselytize the folk coming from the South. And it kind of put not a damper, but on those who were coming from the Caribbean, who were a little more educated than American men. The American guys were kind of, not happy. However, the men from the Caribbean were well educated. For instance, your grandpa, or as I call him, Grandpa Forde, was a former Anglican priest. Okay, he was also a chiropractor, practicing chiropractor out of England. He studied in England, and he was well educated. He had a very, very big voice, very big voice. I remember going to his church in Detroit, where everyone was talking in the microphone. And when he got up to speak, he took the microphone and turned it away. And his voice just lit up the whole church. Now that church there in Detroit, his last church seats about 450 to 500 people. And his voice resonated in that church. I was always fascinated with that. I can remember him standing there. He was a tall man. He was about 6'4", and with this beaming voice, and him turning that mic away. I said, "You go, Grandpa." It was fun to watch. It was fun to hear him, and it was always something special to hear his sermons. Always something special. Dad, my dad, Nebert, your uncle. Your grandpa, that's right, I'm sorry, was was a kind of a hard customer. And when I look back, I shouldn't say hard, but very, should I say, precise in his upbringing for Irwin and I and the rest of us kids. Uh, he always taught us to be very truthful and dutiful. Okay, what I meant that he always taught us to do things with our hands. Make sure you know how to do something with your hands. So if this degree, and this is before we even thought about degrees, if the degree you get fails, you will always have something to do uh, and can make money by and make a living. So I asked him once, degree, uh, he said, yes, you're going to go to college and you're going to get a degree. Okay, all you boys, I want all you boys to go to college and get a degree. Okay, become educated, and that way no one will take this away from you. Okay, however, if you don't make it, you got something else to fall back on. Uh, so make sure you know, you pay attention to what I'm teaching you. Well, he taught me how to paint. Okay, he taught Irwin how to be a plumber. All right. Nathan was supposed to have been the carpenter, which he did for a while. He did a good job of it also. And Hank was late, very late. Hank was supposed to be the farmer, which he is beginning to become that right now. Uh, but in the meantime, we all had something to do in Dad's business. Now, Dad's business was this. He was flipping houses before the term flipping houses became a national phenomenon. Flipping houses meaning you would buy these old dilapidated houses, you would fix them up, and you would sell them for high. You buy low, sell high, but in between you had to fix the building up. Well, that's what he was doing. Fixing these houses, these old dilapidated houses he would purchase. Now, I imagine he purchased them very, very cheap, okay, because that's the only job my dad had. He did, when I say job, big job, okay. He did have a menial job at the hotel called the Del Prado Hotel. It's where all the baseball players stayed when they were in Chicago playing baseball. And he would bring home tips and a lot of food, but that was not his main thing. His main thing was buying and selling houses, okay? And the people that fixed the houses up were his sons. Yes, um, we would always be available after school to do what we had to do, okay? And I became pretty efficient at painting at one time. And I know Irwin used to do a lot of plumbing. Matter of fact, he still does. The last time I visited him in Chicago, he was showing me the stuff in his bathroom that he had put in himself, So he's still pretty cool at that. Yeah. By the time I got to 8th grade, he did not send me to public school. Well, I did go to public school between 1st grade and 6th grade. I went to public school. Those were times when I was getting to a point where I was seeing reading. They didn't have television back then. I was reading a lot about gangs and gangsters in Chicago, and it was curious to me that we live near gangsters that I read about. I started to kind of move away toward that end, don't know why, but I love the gangster thing. My dad saw it, and I remember him telling me that I got to get away from reading this stuff about the gangsters in the neighborhood, you know. One day I was walking from home to school, and there was this cap gun. If you know what a cap gun is, it's a little gun that you would put a paper cap in, and the cap had gunpowder in it, and you would shoot the cap, and it would go pop, you know. So I picked up this cap gun, and I was showing all the boys in the classroom this cap gun that I found on the street. In the meantime, the teacher saw it, and she called my dad. Daddy comes to school, okay, and he motions to me in this big old classroom, you know, to come up front. And all the kids are looking, you know, wide-eyed. What is my dad going to do to me, you know? He says, Winton, where did you get this gun from? I said, on the sidewalk by the gutter on the way to school. He said, you sure? I said, yeah. He said, did you know this is a real gun? A real gun? That's not a real gun. Yes, it is. Well, he broke the thing down, and there were bullets in it. The teacher had taken it away from me, of course, you know. I was showing it, yeah. And the next thing I know, there's a policeman that my dad gave the gun to the policeman. And he said, are you sure you got this? Where did you get this gun? I said, it was in the gutter, you know, walking to school. There it was. Anyway, a day later, the policeman came to the house and told Dad and I the gun they were looking for, that was it. It was involved in a murder, you know. Yeah. He said, the policeman said, young man, this is not a cap pistol. It is a real gun. And he said it was loaded. It could have gone off, you know. It could have gone off if you'd have pulled the trigger. Now, I don't know why I had the gun all those hours. I never pulled the trigger, you know. Never pulled the trigger on the gun. If I would have pulled the trigger while I was showing all my buddies, somebody would have died, you know. But anyway, in my eighth grade graduation from Shiloh Seventh-day Adventist School, my dad told us that we were moving to the country. Why are we moving to the country? He looked directly at me. He said, I want to save you, son. Save me from what? I said, I want to go to DuSable High School. And you know DuSable High School. I want to go to DuSable. It was in our neighborhood. DuSable High School. It was a big high school, man. Basketball team, everything. They were good in basketball. They were good in everything, you know. And he said, no, you're not going to DuSable. He said, there are gangs over there. So what? He said, no. He said, what you're going to do in the country is learn how to plant life and raise life and not be available to take it. You know, I said, really? I didn't know what he was talking about, you know. But anyway, we went to the country. And I asked him one day when I was grown, I said, Dad, remember you told me you were sending me to the country so I could learn how to raise life instead of take it? He said, son, I really thought you were on your way to be a gangster. Really? He said, because you were involved in too many things that would have led you into a gangster life, you know. He said, you liked the guns. You even made zip guns in the basement with my galvanized pipe, you know. And he said, you needed to get out of the city life. And I thought this farm, this 80-acre farm, could do you some good. I said, it did, because I loved farm life. Now, we moved from Chicago to a little town called Bloomingdale, where I went to high school for 4 years. Okay, Bloomingdale High School. The town consisted of 300 families. That's it. It had one stoplight, one stop sign, and a railroad track that ran through the middle. A freight train ran through the middle of it. We were 1.5 miles from school, okay, and I would walk to school on a daily basis, back and forth, 1.5 miles. And it was just a great time of my life. that I thought the country was the place to be at the time. And it was. And we raised corn, we raised chickens, and we had 100 apple trees and 100 pear trees. And I learned how to prune them. And mother would send the fruit to the Chicago market. And we were so happy when sometimes the green beans that we would sell, we would get $7 a bushel for them, you know. I was looking on the market the other day, just how much does a green bean cost a bushel now? $35. I said, what? $35 a bushel the farmers get from their farm to the market, $35 a bushel. I said, I was only getting 7. We were only getting 7. But anyway, time has changed. Time has changed. But anyway, I loved farm life. It got so, well, Bloomingdale was rural. And after I left and went to the service, Dad sold that farm in Bloomingdale and bought the farm that you all know in Hartford, because that farm was on the road on a main road, Route 20, from Chicago to Detroit. And the Greyhound bus, you just walk out in front of the house and do that to the Greyhound bus, and it would stop either way, you know? And you could go straight to Chicago or straight to Detroit, either way. So mother had that. Mother and the rest of my siblings had that, because in Bloomingdale, she couldn't have that freedom to go to either city when she wasn't driving.
I remember there was something about Aunt Rachel or wherever, at least in my head, the farm in Hartford was also near to
Yeah, Aunt
Gra-
Rachel.
huh?
Aunt Rachel.
Aunt Rachel, right? So Grandma's family was near to that property as well,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
just Aunt Rachel? I don't know.
No, no. How that came about, Aunt Rachel. Aunt Rachel was always around our family.
Okay.
That was mother's sister, mother's only sister in Chicago. Now she had other sisters in other cities, but Aunt Rachel was just like a mother. Okay, she was always there. And Aunt Rachel, when Dad moved the farm to Hartford, Aunt Rachel came from Chicago and bought the farm next to us, okay, which was like a half mile down the road. That was a half mile. Yeah. So she was always there with us, you know. Aunt Rachel was like another mother, all right. Matter of fact, here's a story about Aunt Rachel. Aunt Rachel loved to fish. I did too, okay. And it was this day she came over to the house, and she said, Winton, I want to take you fishing. I said, good, let's go. So we went to the lake, rented a boat, got out there, and it was the best fishing day I have ever had in my life. She caught 50 bluegills. I caught about 30. Okay, I mean, you ever seen these pictures of fish jumping in the boats? Well, these fish, oh, you had to throw out your line with the worm on it. They catch it, you know. And she said, these fish are hungry today. Let me just throw out my line with nothing on it. Boom, got a fish, you know, nothing on it. No bait at all. Well, we came home, we cleaned fish, and we ate fish, okay? The next day, mother tells me, she says, Winton, Aunt Rachel hasn't come up. She was supposed to have been up here by 10 o'clock. Go down there and get her, you know, and drive the car and bring her back up. Okay, good. Well, I go down there and I knock on the door. She doesn't answer, you know. The dog is barking. Shut up, dog. Be quiet. The dog is barking. The dog is barking. The dog is barking. I go around to the back door, I knock on the door's locked. Can't get in. I said, where is she? The car is here. She got to be here, you know? So start going around to windows, looking and peeping in the windows. She must be asleep. So I go to her window. Okay, I look in the window. The curtain was open, you know, and she's laying on the bed with her hands like this, and she's foaming at the mouth. All right. So I knew something was wrong with Aunt Rachel. So I just got my rock, broke the window, opened it up there, and saw that she was not breathing. Her eyes were going, you know. So I got in the car, ran down to Mama, told Mother what was happening. She called the ambulance, and she died about maybe an hour after they couldn't save her. Yeah, she was dying. She had a heart attack. Yeah. But she had a great day, as she said. She said, boy, after I finished, she said, that was the best day I've had in a long time. That was the last time. She was in her 70s, like 71, 72, somewhere around there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she, no, she never had any children. Mm-mm. Yeah. And her husband, Uncle Wiley, had already died. He had died. Yeah. She was by herself. Yeah. But she was a very strong woman, just like Jessie, you know. They were two peas in a pot. Yeah.